Guyana, and welcome to Facing the Nation. I am Malika Ramsey. Thank you very much for joining us. And of course, today is the final Friday in November, and I trust that you all would have had a great month, which means, again, we're fastly approaching the Christmas season. Well, the season has already started, the Christmas season, but we're fastly approaching Christmas, and I know people will get busier, our streets especially will get busier. So I just want to remind you that whatever you do, try to be as alert as you possibly can. Be safe, as I always urge you. It also will mark the end of Road Safety Month 2015. And it's unfortunate that we've had so many accidents in Road Safety Month. I don't have the statistics right now, but I can tell you there have been a lot, and unfortunately, again, in the last 24 hours we lost about 4 persons on our roads, and this is just the reported cases, the cases that I know about. It is unfortunate, even more unfortunate, that one of those persons we lost in the last 24 hours is a 17-year-old boy. He is a relative of one of the operators right here at CNS Channel 6. His name is Travis Bollers, and it really is sad because we're getting reports that he was killed by a white Tacoma. Of course, no number plate was given. The driver apparently knocked the 2 youngsters off the bike, came out, had a look at them, and decided that it was okay for him to jump into his vehicle and drove away. Unfortunately, the young man died. One of the young men, because it was 2 of them on the bike, one of the young men died as he was receiving treatment at the Georgetown Public Hospital Corporation. So we're also asking anyone with information to please come forward, contact the nearest police station, or there's a telephone number on his brother's Facebook page that I do not want to give that number out here. So if you have any information, for those of you who follow me on Facebook, inbox me, and it's not very difficult to find me. So just, if you have information, just give that. And if the driver who is culpable is watching, we suggest that you turn yourself in. You've already done wrong. No need to make it worse. Unfortunately, parents have lost a child, brothers and sisters have lost their siblings. So you need to do what's right. So unfortunately, I had to start the program on that very sad note. So with that, I am urging you all, it's not only about November, it's about being very careful on our roadways. Be as safe as you possibly can. Do not drink and drive, and do not speed. We are losing too many of our citizens to that unfortunate situation. On today's program, we're talking about 2 main things that's happening for Guyana right now. First off, local government elections, and secondly, e-governance. Of course, you know, e-governance is very important to Guyana, and we have I'm expecting the government's advisor on e-governance in Guyana, Mr. Floyd Levi. He is supposed to be here a little later on in the program. But we're going to start off with local government elections because we have been talking about local government elections for a very, very long time, even before the APNU AFC administration got into government. And this is one of the promises that were made on the campaign trail. And as you would know, the APNU AFC government is living up to that promise to have local government elections soon, and the date has been given as Friday the 18th of March 2016. And who better to talk about local government elections than the minister of the man of the moment? We will call him that until after March 2016. The man of the moment, the Minister of Communities, Mr. Ronald Bulkan. Welcome to you, sir.
Thank you, Malika. I'm pleased to be on your program here this afternoon.
Wonderful.
And a pleasant good afternoon to all our viewers and listeners.
Yes, and you have been missed. And on the note of viewers, you get a chance to be a part of this conversation with the minister too. He will answer some of the questions that I have for him first, and then I will give you not very long, very brief, a few brief minutes to pose and call and ask the questions you may have on local government elections. First off, Minister, let's talk about the importance of local government elections. What really is local government elections, and why is it important?
That's a very good question, Malika. Basically, local government, it's the system for the administration or the management and development of our towns as well as our villages. These are called municipalities and neighborhoods, or more particularly, neighborhood democratic councils. In Guyana, there are 71 of such local government areas, and they're actually further subdivided into constituencies, of which there are 580 such constituencies. As you can infer or tell from that number, those are smaller areas, and what this results in is that people then have the power to meaningfully participate in the decisions that directly affect their lives. And this is why local government is so important, because it actually gives power to the people. I must say, however, that to conduct elections in 580 constituencies, it's actually a very expensive exercise. But the administration is clear and unequivocal that giving power to the people and bringing real democracy to Guyana is very important.
It's very important also. All right, there has been much talk. I even had a friend who said to me, you know, she said, Malika, you think I can run? So with her saying that, no, I'm going to ask you, who can participate and how can the person or persons participate? I mean, this is aside from the voting population. Who really can participate in local government elections, and how far can they go to run, maybe run for office, for want of a better term?
Malika, the new regulations governing local government elections now allows for the participation not only of political parties and voluntary groups who would have been eligible in our last local government elections held in 1994, but subsequent to the local government reforms, it is now possible even for an individual to participate or to offer themselves as a candidate to be a councillor in these local government elections. A candidate, an individual, however, seeking to participate in these elections can only do so in relation to the constituencies that I referred to a short moment ago, those 585 constituencies. And all that is required of an individual seeking to participate or to be a candidate is, in the case of a NDC area, is for their candidacy to be supported by between 15 and 20 persons registered within that constituency, or in the case of a municipality, 30 to 40 persons registered within that constituency in the municipality. And of course, the constituency, it's a smaller area within the entire council, whether it's a municipality or an NDC.
Okay, and even though it's a small area, you can run in that smaller area.
You can run as an independent candidate only for that constituency representation, and that the constituency candidate will be or the councillor will be that candidate who obtains the greatest number of votes in that constituency, and this is what is referred to as the first past the post element of these elections. So 50% of the seats on each council are from constituency representatives, and the other 50% of the seats on the council comes from the PR list. And those PR lists, contestants can only come from either the political parties or the voluntary groups. However, in relation to the constituency element of the council, a political party can nominate an individual to represent, to be that candidate. Similarly, a civil or a civic group can contest, can put forward a candidate, or an individual can run on their own.
On their own. So, but there's not a limit on how many persons can run. Well, at this time in March 2016, is there a limit to how many persons can run from the one constituency, meaning run against each other?
No, there is actually no limit to the amount of persons who can offer themselves to be candidates, providing that they meet the qualifying criteria, which, apart from the residency criteria, it mainly has to do with having the requisite amount of registered voters within that constituency endorsing your candidacy.
Okay, all right. Viewers, I still have more questions for the minister, of course, but just in the essence of time, what I'm going to try to do today is mix your questions with my questions. So the phone lines are now open. You can call in, pose your questions while I still talk to the minister. Of course, you know the rules. Stick to the topic. Today, Minister Bulkan is dealing with local government election. Any other question, I'll ask him to disregard your questions. Turn the volumes of your television sets down, be brief, and get to the point. So the phone lines are now open. You can call and I'll mix your questions with the ones that I have. Let's talk about the functions of itself, the services that you talk about, and the functions of local government. Minister.
Malika, local government is that system of government which deals with day-to-day issues within our communities, and it has to do with the management of our respective communities. And the basic issues, of course, relate to the maintenance of public places, parapets, playgrounds, the maintenance of drainage systems. It has to do with solid waste management, the efficient and effective collection and disposal of garbage. It has to do with the condition of roads, parks, public places, burial grounds, the condition of streets, street lighting, and of course there are other issues such as ensuring that the zoning regulations and issues such as local nuisances, whether they are relating to control of stray animals, noise nuisances, something that is very prevalent in many of our communities, where business places and even public individuals are responsible for noise nuisances. There are some cases where there are dust nuisances, regulating commercial activity in our residential communities. These are all local issues that plague many of our communities across our country, which sadly are actually a daily feature. One of the reasons that is attributable for this has to do with the breakdown in the effective functioning of our councils.
Okay.
And this is why it's so essential for this degraded system of local government, which has reached a point where it's quite rotten at this stage, that it has to be rehabilitated.
Okay, and of course through local government elections. Caller, welcome. This is Facing the Nation.
Afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Question. Would the local government election...
Caller, you're going to have to speak up for us a bit, please. Thanks.
Yeah, would the minister accept the machine that the voting machine that
This
they are offering for this election?
would it. You talk.
Yeah, I think the caller is referring to the use of electronic voter machines.
Okay.
Caller, the answer is that no, it is not a consideration for any electronic form of voting for the local government elections, which will be held in March of next year. Of course, it is no secret that the use of technology, which allows for more efficient management of a process, is something that cannot be forestalled indefinitely. But as at this time, it is not expected that voter machines will be used for these elections.
Okay. We talked earlier about who can participate in terms of running for office. Of course, your term is better. But let's talk about voting now. Who can vote in the local government elections? Is it the same system as the regional and general elections? Viewers, the phone lines are still open for you to call in the meantime. Go ahead, Minister.
Yeah. Malika, to be eligible to vote, you would have to be a registered voter, registered by GCOM. You would have to be resident within the local government area. Of course, by definition, it means that you have to be 18 years and older, and you'd have to be resident within the constituency for which you want to exercise your vote. And the age requirement, you'd have to be 18 by February 29, 2016. And of course, you have to be a citizen of Guyana or you could as well be a Commonwealth citizen residing in Guyana for at least 1 year. And as I said, you have to live either within the municipality or the NDC for which you want to vote.
You talked about living within the municipality. I'm sorry, but I have to go back to the persons who are actually running for office. Let's say someone grew up in a community, grew up in a certain neighborhood, but of course they grew up and they ventured out on their own, gone to another community. However, their family is still residing in that said community where they grew up in. Can that person possibly run in that community in which he or she grew up in?
The answer is no.
No, okay.
You can only participate either by being a candidate, or you'd only be allowed to vote in the specific constituency or NDC or municipality in which you are registered.
In which you're registered.
And which you should also be resident.
Okay.
But the main qualification is where you're registered.
Is where you're registered.
Yeah, not where you traditionally lived.
All right. Of course, I don't know why the callers seem shy today. They've been bombarding my Facebook page about local government elections, but they're not posing the questions here. But let's talk about what else that you believe at this point in time Guyanese should know about local government election. The reason I'm asking this is because the fact is local government elections are new to many of us. People my age, people a little older, people a lot younger. It's very, very new. So what else should Guyanese, especially young people, who this is a first for us, what else should we know about local government elections?
Malika, among the things that all our citizens, and in particular younger persons, should know as to why it is important to participate in this process, it is one of the main reasons is that the persons who are elected would be the persons who would manage the affairs of our communities. And by not participating, it means then that you would be surrendering your right as to who actually manages your community to someone else. And that, of course, is not a good situation to be in. It is recognized that it is because of the breakdown in local administration that has led to so many problems in our communities that it is necessary for this system to be repaired and rehabilitated, and of which the renewal of the life of these councils is so important. The local government elections offers the opportunity for citizens to exercise their confidence in persons who have the capacity to manage the affairs, the community affairs. And this is why it is important for persons to take advantage of this opportunity that is being offered, because it is, as I said before, it is a very expensive undertaking, but it is an investment that the administration is convinced will bring dividends, because it will eventually result in more efficiently and better managed communities. And it is for this, among other reasons, that it is important for citizens to take advantage of this opportunity and to participate in this process.
Just for information purposes, especially for people who are now focusing on local government elections, when was the last time we had local government elections in Guyana?
I believe that the majority of your viewers might be familiar with that when that activity took place. Of course, it was in 1994. And under our laws, local government elections are supposed to be held every 3 years, which means that the last local government elections should have been held in 1997. And here we are in 2015, and these elections will actually not be held until 2016, which is a gap of some 2 decades. It has placed an enormous strain on the functioning of our local government organs. It has led to the capacity of these organs being severely degraded, and the system is actually on the verge of collapse. Its renewal and rehabilitation is an imperative for us to have good governance and effective management of our communities, our towns, our villages, and our neighborhoods.
Are we in a position now for both both financially and in terms of human resources, are we in a position now for this current administration to live up to the every 3-year local government elections? Are we in that position as yet?
Malika, I'd like to say, I'd like to give, I believe, an undertaking that emanates from what I'm aware is the deep commitment of President Granger insofar as it relates to honoring our constitutional provisions, one of them being the necessity of holding local government elections when they're constitutionally due. I am aware that the President firmly believes that the system of local government is of vital importance in the overall management of our country. And President Granger has actually gone out on a limb to emphasize the absolute importance of a fully functioning system of local government, and even beyond that, to have effective local democracy, because the President has said and has clearly articulated that there is not only a nexus between local democracy and human development, but that these two issues, that they're actually inseparable and inextricable. So against that, I think I can say with a great degree of confidence that there will actually be a next cycle of local government elections when they're constitutionally due, even before our next general elections. And given the fact that we have not, in the last 46 years, there's actually been only one local government elections, and I'm referring, of course, to the fact that prior to 1994, the previous local government election was in 1970. So if one had to be 18 years old to be able to vote in the 1970 local government elections, I believe if my math is correct, you would now be about 64 years of age, and you would have only had the opportunity to participate in one local government elections, being the one in 1994. So by definition, what it means is that the role of local government election is actually very little appreciated and understood. So I believe it is going to take much more than one local government electoral cycles for there to be a full understanding and appreciation on the part of our citizens as to the importance of local government elections. And this is why this administration will be committed to ensuring that this delay in the holding of elections does not become a common feature.
Well, I know that the public certainly hopes so, because that, what you just explained, that tells why not only the capital city, but all across the country, why we're in such a messy state to begin with, because we have not been having constant or steady upgrades in terms of infrastructure and so on, because of not having these local government elections. Am I correct?
Absolutely correct, Malika. We have had, unfortunately, for the greater part of our period since independence, we've had too strong a central government and not enough dependence or reliance on the vital role of our local government organs. And our communities have actually suffered as a result of that. The results of that are fairly evident, and this administration is committed to reversing that unhealthy tendency and to repair this damaged local government system and to provide for a meaningful and effective role of local government in pursuance of effective local democracy to begin with, in accordance with our constitutional provisions, which provides for such an effective and meaningful role of our local government organs.
Okay. Viewers, you still have just a few more minutes left to pose your questions on local government elections. I know I have a caller online, of course, but you still have a few minutes to pose those questions before I have to let the minister go. He's very busy because he is preparing for those elections come March 2016. Caller, welcome.
A very good afternoon to you, Malika.
Good afternoon.
Very much, and a very special good afternoon. Congratulations to Minister Dear,
Yes.
the entire cabinet as well, in working so hard in getting our local government elections off.
On their behalf, I say thank you.
Yes. individual is elected an office bearer and should have mismanagement and abuse of power, what are the measures there to correct such a situation?
Thank you for that question, caller. Well, the first line of defense against abuse of power would actually reside within the council to be able to discipline any errant or irresponsible councillor. But if there is the case where an entire council happens to be delinquent in their duties and are guilty of abuse of office, there is provision within the existing legislation for ministerial intervention where the minister can intervene to seek to bring back due regularity into the functioning of that council. But in an extreme case, there is also the provision and possibility for the dissolution of any such delinquent council that may be guilty of an abuse of office.
Okay, all right. Well said, Minister Bulkan. Since we seem to have lost the final caller, I think this is where I let the minister go. But finally, before you go, I'd just like to talk about the position of mayor for a bit. You did explain the entire process. Is that the position or the situation of mayor? Is it any different from what you've explained regarding the whole elections and who can run and how they can run for office?
Malika, when we participate and when we vote at these local government elections, we are not voting for a mayor for any of our 9 municipalities or towns. What we are voting for, we're voting for a councillor within the constituency that we live, as well as we are voting for all of the councillors for the entire local government area. And in this case, I mean, your reference is to a town. So for Georgetown, the council is made up of 30 councillors. So depending on it means by definition, there are 15 constituencies within the city of Georgetown. So as a voter, you're voting for one of the 15 constituency councillors, as well as for the entire complement of 30 councillors. It is after those elections, when those 30 councillors meet, that among themselves, they then elect a mayor and a deputy mayor. Of course, understandably, those persons will be individuals who command the confidence of the majority of those 30 members of the Georgetown City Council. So I believe that there are persons out there who are now promoting themselves that to be elected as the mayor of Georgetown. But under the arrangements, you know, we are actually not voting for a mayor, but we'll be voting for a councillor.
I know that explanation helps many of us, including yours truly. Caller, I'm happy you got through. Welcome.
Hi, good afternoon.
Yes, good afternoon.
I'd like to ask the minister something.
Go ahead.
Good afternoon. I'd like to know when you're expecting to give out house plots.
You'd like to know what?
I would like to know when you're giving out the house plots then.
All right, thank you for your question, caller. The minister is here to talk about, you obviously missed the beginning of this interview, but the minister is here to talk about local government elections today. A few months ago, Minister Keith Scott was here and he was talking about housing and housing development and so on. However, I know there's a need to have a refresher program on that, so I promise you in future programs, I'll be having, if not Minister Bulkan himself back, but the minister, Mr. Keith Scott, to talk about that. We'll take this final call and then I definitely have to let the minister go. Caller, welcome.
Good afternoon.
Yes, good afternoon to you.
I have a question for the minister.
Go ahead. Once it's on local government.
Can the local government, the election for the local government, can it stop the road accident, right?
Fair enough questions. Caller, listen for your response.
Yes, it's a very valid question. I'd like to thank the caller for posing that question. The only issues that are beyond the purview of a local government organ would actually be matters relating to the national defense or foreign policy. Under our laws, a local government organ is actually empowered to deal with all issues related to a community, So it would include as well issues relating to safety and security, and it would also allow a local government organ would be empowered to negotiate on behalf of the residents of that respective community with the police force, with other agencies, with any issue, whether it relates to education, health, safety and security, road and traffic management. And this is why the need for effective local councils cannot be overemphasized, because a council is empowered under law to address and deal with all issues that relates to the management of our communities.
Okay.
I'd also like to take the opportunity to offer a brief response to the previous caller in relation to house lots, and to say
It's
to
okay.
that caller...
The minister's allowed to break the rules.
Thank you. And to say to that caller, as well as all of our other viewers, that it is my intention that the CHNPA, as well as the Ministry of Communities, very shortly, within the next week or two, to make a public statement in relation to and with regards to the allocation of house lots and homes, because there's a huge backlog in the system, but to be able to update all of our citizens as to what efforts the Ministry and the Central Housing and Planning Authority are currently engaged in to be able to address these priority concerns of all residents.
Thank you very much, Minister Bulkan, and well said. And I must let you know, I'm giving you fair warning, upfront warning, because we're preparing for local government elections. Viewers, just a reminder, local government elections are scheduled for the 18th of March, 2016. Because we're preparing for local government elections, Minister, I will definitely be calling you back several more times for several more programs like these and discussions like these, especially as the new questions arise from the population. So Facing the Nation once again will become like your best friend. So you'll be back here between now and March for more than one time.
I look forward to that, Malika. It will always be my pleasure to be here.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Of course, this has been a discussion with the Minister of Communities, and we were talking about local government elections. This is Facing the Nation. On the other side of this quick break, of course, I did promise you earlier that we'll also be talking about e-government. Of course, you know, it's all about technology and access to the internet, and some of us begin to lose our minds if we can't get access to the internet. So the person in charge of that is here to tell you all about it. Coming up next is the advisor to government advisor on e-government. This is Facing the Nation. Stay tuned. Thanks for staying with Facing the Nation, and those of you who are now joining us, welcome. And unfortunately, you did miss an entire mouthful on local government elections because you know that is in the air. But I will be bringing more information to you as we go along, as we prepare for those elections in March of next year. Well, this half of the program is designed to discuss e-government in Guyana. We've all been hearing about, of course, this is since the APNU AFC administration took office. We've all been hearing about the e-government unit and everything that government is doing to facilitate e-government and e-governance. Of course, Mr. Floyd Levi will explain the difference. I always kind of mix them up, but that's why he's here today. On today's program, I have Mr. Floyd Levi. He is the government advisor on e-government. He's accompanied by Mr. Clement Henry, who is a consultant with the e-government unit. Gentlemen, welcome to you both.
Oh, thank you for having us, Malika.
Great to have you both. Mr. Levi, first of all, what is e-government?
Well, Malika, simply put, e-government is a system whereby government, your regular government, uses ICTs to deliver the government services, health, education, security, and all of the other government services to the citizens. Many countries have incorporated government into their operations because it is primarily much more efficient than the regular form of government. Really and truly, delivering government services using ICTs.
All right. In saying all of that, why should me, the ordinary Jane at home, care about e-government?
Well, exactly that. You can be at home and still receive government services because in your home, in your house, you have ICTs, and many citizens have internet at home. Their computers, laptops, tablets are there, and needing or wanting to interact with government, to get a government service, you go on that device and you can actually access the government service. And I always give one example. If you wanted to have a birth certificate, generally citizens are required to go to the post office, make an application on a form for that birth certificate, and then that is sent to the General Register Office through the post office system. But in the government system, where you can apply for a birth certificate, that can all be done online. You make your application, you fill out all of the details, and the agency that is providing that service will receive it via, let's say in this case, the internet.
The internet. Okay, before I even talk to Mr. Henry, again, e-government, it may have been there all along, but to many of us it's new because we weren't hearing about this e-government, what it is, this e-government units and all of that. Let's talk about, and this is of course, viewers, my intention here is not to attack anybody, but let's talk about a system that you are now working with. What kind of system did you take over? Did we have any signs, anything at all when it comes to e-government in place before the new administration and before you became advisor on e-government?
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to respond to that, Malika. Okay, essentially, the previous administration had started off on an e-government project which sought to provide a physical infrastructure over which ultimately e-government services would have been delivered. And the successes and failures, a lot of failures on this project were well advertised. The project also contemplated having a fiber optic cable being run from Georgetown to Lethem, where it would have interconnected with a Brazilian company to provide internet access for the government network. That did not materialize, that was not successful. However, what was actually built was a network on the coast connecting Charity, or from as far as Charity, to Molson Creek on the Quarantine, as well as around Georgetown. So that is the element, or the physical element of the government network that was actually in place when I was appointed the advisor on e-government.
Financially expensive to turn it around? Has it been thus far?
Well, I would say at this point it appears to be a costly venture to repair or to operationalize the aspects that were not successful on this project. That's a physical infrastructure project. But we have conducted an initial review of all the works that were done internally, and we recognize that there is a huge cost involved to turn this around. So we're actually engaging in a deeper review of what is required before we make that commitment.
Okay, all right, great. Clement Henry, of course, as I said earlier, viewers, he is a consultant with the E-Government unit. He's going to get the opportunity right now to tell you exactly what kind of consultant he is. But in your job description, in what you're doing now, what are you seeing? What are we lacking? What improvements have been made thus far? Let's start.
Thank you. When we started at E-Government, when Mr. Levi invited me to support what was happening at E-Government, he said that what they saw lacking was the social component of the ICT rollout. They felt that we needed to consider what were some of the socioeconomic barriers towards the adoption and use of ICT and e-services. And therefore, our task in social management was to go to those communities, develop profiles of those communities, and seek out what are some of the community infrastructure that can help in the advancement of e-government.
Okay. Have you discovered community infrastructure that can really help at this time? Because, I mean, it's interesting that I was just talking about local government elections and an archaic look and everything. Have you discovered any infrastructure that could support what the e-government unit will do?
Well, before I answer the question directly, I want to give you an idea of what we have rolled out in terms of concepts. We have 3 concepts that we're looking at. We call them PAPs, CAPs, and SIAPs. Okay. Now, the PAPs are public internet access points. And I think Mr. Levi may roll out some more of those concepts. We have community internet access points, which is the CAPs, and the SIAPs are the school's internet access points.
Gotcha.
Among these 3 concepts, when we go to the community, we are looking for public infrastructure, public space, parks, any way that we can find ideal where we can have internet being broadcasted from that area, connectivity in that area, and youths, adults, persons can come there and be able to access, first of all, connectivity, get connectivity first, and as we roll out these services, they can come to those points and access these services.
Okay, all right, so it's there. The infrastructure is there. It's actually
yes, so
there.
it's going to be some of the schools. It could be a community center. It could be a park, an open space, a safe space. All of those are some of the things that we are looking for. Once we identify these facilities, we on our return back to the center, we discussed this with the head of the government and with the infrastructure department, and they will now consider factoring these facilities in towards the expansion of the connectivity services.
I'm not sure how much input you would probably need from citizens and how much feedback you would need as you go about getting e-government established and so on. But thus far, do you find that you're getting the cooperation from them, and are they with you? Are they understanding, the benefits from e-government, especially in your work in the fields?
Well, so far we've had great reception. We've visited communities in Region 6, Angois Avenue, Firish, and Wim, and in those communities we've had good feedback. We want this process to be participative. We don't want to just go and set up our access points and the folks may not be comfortable with where it's located, and that is why we are moving into the citizens, talking with them so that we can get their feedback in terms of the implementation of these activities. So far in Region 6, we've had good feedback from the communities. We've been in Region 4, the block of communities that we refer as Sophia, which include Turkine and Pattinson. We've had some good feedback there. Agricola, we've had some good feedback in those communities. Annandale, we're moving down, and we've also had discussion with the folks at Buxton. We're moving over to Parfait Harmony in the new week. And so we're getting good feedback to this point.
Not to rush the process, but we have had a problem in this country for decades. The hinterland communities. It's His Excellency, the President of Guyana, Brigadier David Granger, had once described it as basically Guyana has become 2 nations. We have the hinterland community. Sometimes they don't get the news that we're reading today. They may not get this, some of the communities, unfortunately, until the end of December, even early January. how soon can we see movement and establishment in those hinterland communities?
I'll defer that to Mr. Levi.
Well,
Sure.
thank you. Well, I think like what we needed to do was back up slightly to understand that one of the reasons why we are promoting the social component that Ms. Henry just spoke of is because that a lot of our citizens do not have access, particularly to the internet and to ICTs on the whole. A lot of our citizens, despite what we may think. So this component that he spoke of, the social component, really aims to bring to those citizens that are without access, bring access to them. That is why it is done at the community level. And in the case of the school children, it is done at schools. Now, you spoke of the hinterland, and I certainly would want to echo the President's thinking on the divide, the digital divide that exists in Guyana. I always say that when you pass Timeri, for example, that's a different digital country there. They don't generally have the same level of experience that we have with the internet and with technology. So it is our intention to take to the hinterland communities, hinterland and remote communities in Guyana, the same level of ICT access that we're providing for the coast. In those communities that Mr. Henry just mentioned, we would like to take ICT access to those communities in order that we can bridge that divide, divide that exists in Guyana, where the people on the coast experience a decent form of ICT, and those in the interior, as you said, it's a different world time lapse.
Are you in a position to say that November 2016, the people in the hinterland communities will be accessing what we're accessing?
As you know, the hinterland is a very, very large area. It's a considerable portion of Guyana, what we term the hinterland. But we have started a project that focuses on poor, remote, and hinterland communities. But specifically to the hinterland communities, we're working with not only the Ministry of the Presidency, we're working with the Ministry of Indigenous Peoples Affairs, and we're working also with the United Nations Development Program in Guyana to formulate a program that will address specifically that. We aim to provide satellite services, satellite connectivity for the 208 indigenous communities that exist within the hinterland. And this connectivity is not just for internet. It's primarily focused at connecting those communities with the government's network. So communities are now going to be connected to the government network for, as I said earlier, e-services. Right? So you live in one of those communities and you require government services, you do not necessarily have to travel all the way to Georgetown or to your regional center for government services. The intention is that we develop packages that will provide government services to those residents in their community using infrastructure that we will set up.
I'm assuming this would eventually apply for people who are applying for passports too, because that is a sore point in Guyana, the amount of time that you have to spend at the passport office. Of course, I know this falls under the Minister of Citizenship, but in terms of e-government.
Okay, and that's a classical example of how e-government works. In the case of the passport system, I know there have been several considerations before we can actually apply for passport online, because primarily the security. There is a huge concern about security and maintaining the integrity of the system. I'm not speaking here for the Minister of Citizenship. However, I am aware that the plans are afoot to actually get the passport services outside of Georgetown, and as much as possible for that process, for it to be made available on the internet or on the government's network.
All right. I know you're the advisor, and you're I call him the expert on internet and technology and so on. But let's talk about advice and possible support that you may have already been getting from international agencies and so on.
Well, I just mentioned the United Nations Development Program, which we're working on a huge program, which is really for ICT access and e-services to the poor, remote, and hinterland communities. So that is primarily our major thrust in terms of a project. Of course, we have engaged several international partners. As you're aware, you'd have seen us talking with Microsoft, which is a large company that, of course, delivers the Microsoft Office and our operating system. So we've engaged them from a government perspective to see how we can leverage the size of government to have certainly compliance because there's also another tone in terms of usage of the Microsoft applications, how we can have that compliance and how we can reduce the cost to government for operating, in this case, Microsoft software. We've also had contact with other international players like Cisco and so on, because our network has to expand. And it can only expand by using equipment that is bought from these large international players. So we intend to leverage the size of our network to work with those companies and agencies, and certainly friendly countries to develop our government system.
All right. Eventually, I will just ask you, not only for my clarity, but for the viewers, to explain the difference between e-government and e-governance. But before we even go there, one laptop per family project, of course, that's no more, and the fiber optic cable. Will we see under Floyd Levi programs or projects similar to these, but of course, really and truly benefiting Guyanese, unlike what the others did?
Okay, good, for sure. The one laptop. We have looked at that model where devices are actually given out without much concern for the sustainability and for the appropriate use. And certainly under the guidance of the President, our focus is on delivering devices to teachers and students. So we have come up with an acronym, IDEAL, which is Improving Digital Equity, Access and Learning. So that is our focus when it comes to distributing devices. We want to distribute devices to those sectors of our society where it will be most meaningful. And we believe that can be done within the educational sector. You might have recognized that even though we're going the whole of government, there are some priority areas.
Yes.
One of the priority areas is certainly the educational sector. So in terms of one laptop distribution, we're not calling it the one laptop program, but it's really geared towards teachers, educational institutions, and those students. that are there. As to the fiber optic cable, as I said before, that was a project done or undertaken by the previous administration to bring internet from Brazil all the way, Brazil, Latam, all the way up Guyana through Anai, Pukari, Linden, and Georgetown, because there was difficulty getting it at the rates they wanted it at elsewhere. That project has encountered numerous difficulties. There's been a tremendous amount of trouble with the cable. It's broken in several places. You would have seen images of it on the internet where persons are actually holding it up in their hands, minibuses along the road route, actually would have damaged that cable. The places where it crossed the creek and, it can be seen at low water. So the physical integrity of that cable has been tremendously compromised. So it is, in my estimation now, very, very difficult to use it as it is. Notwithstanding, we are taking a serious review of that project. A lot of money was spent. There's a lot of equipment along that route in Linden, Kurpakari, Anai, and Latem itself that has been placed there to facilitate that cable. So we're taking a review of everything that was done to determine how do we move forward.
Okay, all right.
Good? So I hope that I'll be given the opportunity to come back on your program to
Of course you
report
will.
on that.
E-government is big. As I was saying before I introduced you gentlemen, some of us, when we touch a button and we can't get it to do what we want to do on the internet, we go crazy. I can tell you that's me. I'm admitting it on national television. Gentlemen, before I have to let you go, e-government and e-governance. Is it a significant difference, and do we even need to know?
Well, there is a difference, and we ought to know whenever these things exist, because what I find is that people use those two words interchangeably. They're very close, actually. They're very close. As I said earlier, e-government is a process whereby government would deliver government services to the citizens using ICTs, like the internet and computers, radio, in one case could be cell phones and so on. Now, e-governance is really the process where government and the citizens interact using ICTs. That is, the citizens participate in government or governance of their country or their communities using ICTs. So citizens can actually interact with their councillors, as you were speaking previously with Minister Bulkan. They can participate in elections and all of that. The whole governance structure now evolves to one where ICTs play an important part.
Okay, all right. Well said. I got it. And I know the viewers get it, and you will get it even more because, again, this is not the first and the last visit by Mr. Floyd Levi and, of course, Mr. Clement Henry. Viewers, of course, this has been a great interview on e-government. I promise to have the gentlemen back, even if not both of them, at least one of you. Mr. Clement Henry, consultant with the e-government unit, and Mr. Floyd Levi, government advisor on e-government. This is where I take a quick break. By the time I get back, it will be time for me to wrap up today's program. Gentlemen, thank you very much for being here.
Thank you very much, Malika.
All right, viewers, I want to say thank you very much to all of you for tuning in today. Thanks to the callers who called and focused on local government elections. You see, you had the opportunity to ask the minister any question you wanted to ask him on local government elections, but you did not use that opportunity today, and I know you will still bombard my Facebook inbox with the questions, but I will be able to answer some of them as we go along because I will be getting feedback from Minister Bulkan regarding how preparations are coming for local government elections and so on. You heard it from him. These elections are very, very important. He told you about who's eligible to vote. He told you who can run for office as an elected official. So you have all the information there, and I can promise you as we go forward into the new year and continue to prepare for local government elections, there will be several public announcements. And Minister Bulkan is not the only one who will be on this program talking about preparations for local government elections. So have no fear. By the time we get to the 18th of March 2016, you will be fully equipped with all the knowledge and everything else that you need to be a part of local government elections. Also, thank you very much to those two gentlemen who were just on the panel, Mr. Floyd Levi and Mr. Clement Henry. They did give you some information on e-government unit because I know people are, we've gotten into a culture in Guyana. If we hear our government officials use a phrase or a term and we realize that it has nothing to do with us regarding bread and butter issues or regarding our safety, we step back and we just say, well, let them deal with it. I know because there were cases when the previous government was dealing with the fiber optic cable. There were cases where they had some journalists who did not even clearly understand what the fiber optic cable was all about. I was one of those persons who was a bit, you know, in a strange land when it comes to those things. So we're doing things a little different. We're just trying to get all the citizens involved. We keep saying that governance in Guyana is about all of the people. It's not just about those who sit at Ministry of the Presidency or the various ministries. It's about all of the people coming together and consulting with us and understanding what it is that we're doing and how it is that we plan to use all of these projects and all of these programs to better the lives of citizens. So it was really and truly good to hear from those two gentlemen from e-government unit. Remember that Floyd Levi, he is the government advisor on e-government. Of course, it's coming down to wrap-up time for me. Again, I just want to take this opportunity to urge you to be very, very careful on our roadways. Resist the temptation to speed. I know how it is. Once the road is clear and it's smooth and it's late at night or very early in the morning, you think that's a free pass for you to drive any old way. And it's unfortunate, but even in at peak hours, heavy traffic, you see people still taking some ridiculous chances. People, please, please, it takes nothing from you to wait just for a minute or two rather than you get into an accident. You either kill yourselves or you kill somebody else, and a whole lot of money has to be spent, and then there's grieving and there's crying and we have to deal with funerals. Just people, do not speed. Resist the temptation to speed. And of course, for those who drink and drive, I call them people who intend to commit suicide. Unfortunately, not only suicide, but suicide and murder, because you're also killing other innocent, whether it be pedestrians or other innocent road users. So please do not do those things, especially with the Christmas season coming up. Most of you by now know that Christmas is my favorite time of the year. It's a very sacred season. Christmas is not an opportunity for you to drink and sport and behave as though you're crazy. Christmas is an opportunity for you to remember the birth of Christ. And of course, that's for those of you who celebrate it. For those Christians, it's a time when you remember the birth of Christ, and you be grateful and you be thankful for all the good things that you have received through the fact that Christ was born. And then, of course, it really is a time for you to appreciate all of those things. So with that said, please be careful on our roadways. Embrace life. Unfortunately, again, I began the program on a sad note. I have to end it on a sad note. It's our sympathy and condolence to the relatives and friends of Mr. Travis Bollers, who unfortunately lost his life last night by whether it be just a careless driver or a drunk driver. The bottom line is he was knocked off his motorcycle with along with another young man who I understand is still hospitalized. He unfortunately died as a result of that accident. The driver of the white Tacoma vehicle fled the scene. He came out, looked at the two boys, and just went back into the vehicle and fled the scene. Again, if anyone has any information about that, kindly inbox my Facebook page. There's a number that you can reach his brother at. If you inbox me, I will give you that number. I do not want to put the number out here on national television. So once again, condolence and sympathy to the relatives and friends of young Mr. Bollers. Unfortunately, this is where I have to close today's program. Thank you very much for tuning in. I am Malika Ramsey. Take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and be good Guyanese citizens. Bye-bye.